happen if it lets. Right then, hello and welcome to the video podcast, whatever you want to call it. So you are here with myself, Alex. You'll know me because you're probably subscribing to me. So welcome back and welcome to today's video. So I'm joined with a guest today, a fellow competitor. So I'm not going to introduce you because I don't want to taint anything. So over to you. Introduce yourself. Tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about what this podcast or video is going to be about.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Alex. So I'm going to try and keep this brief, but my name's Gem. I am a personal trainer and online coach. I've also just recently wrapped up my first season competing. I am now 2 weeks post-show, technically post-show. So I did 2 shows this season, obviously towards the back end of the year, and now just transitioning into off-season, really.
Perfect. So I know Gem from being in Bath. We both train at the same gym, albeit this is the only gym in Bath, really. So that's why we are there. But yeah, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to get her on because she had a very successful season. And we both are kind of in a similar situation, like we were both first-time competitors. And I think regardless of what information is out there, nothing really prepares you for your first show like doing your first show. And there's quite a few things that I wish I knew before I went into a prep, and we just kind of want to talk about it. So we put up some question boxes on our Instagram, much to our hate of them because people just send random questions all the time. I often get people wanting to buy shoes. Jem gets things a little bit less appropriate. Yeah, a little bit weirder. So we've kept those out for so we don't get taken off YouTube. But we're going to work through the questions in order. But first, like, tell us about your show. Like, how did you get on in your show? Did you enjoy the process of a prep? Obviously, you are coached by Cuba, but you are a coach yourself. So talk to us about kind of the shows you did, your placings, of course. Like, that's why we're here. But yeah, tell us about that.
Okay, so I started prep back in, I think it was when gyms opened after lockdown, so back in April. So I reckon from the start of prep to my first show, which was the Graftism Grand Prix with 2 bros, that was a just under 20 week prep, I believe. So coming into Graftism, knowing that we had another show to shoot for 3.5 weeks after, which was Arnold's, we knew that we probably weren't going to come in like 100% for Graftism, which I always knew was going to be the case. So having it being my first season anyway, the whole idea was just to go up there, obviously qualify for Arnold's in the first place and just get a little bit of experience under my belt. Obviously it's the first time I've been on stage, done the whole process, and I felt like a little bit more comfortable having done a regional show first before going into what was probably like the biggest show in the UK of the year. Graftism, I probably felt like I came in at about 80%, I'm not gonna lie. So I did the first timers and I did the open class, where I came 5th in the first timers and then 3rd in my open class. And I was happy. I was really, really happy with how the whole prep had gone. I loved it. In all honesty, I did absolutely love the entire process from start to finish. I learned a lot about myself, and it was really eye-opening, to be fair, about what you're really capable of doing. So an incredible experience. Although coming into Graftism, I knew that I could have been better, and that was what I was determined to bring in the 3.5 to 4 weeks between my shows, and pushing very, very hard between the 2, which was probably the hardest like couple of weeks of my life. Just digging for extra bit of conditioning, because my feedback from Graftism was that I needed to have more condition, that my shape was very good, just needed more condition, and me and Cuba knew that was going to be the case. So dug a little bit harder, dug a little bit deeper, and then came in. Yeah, this is very, just digging for that extra bit of condition. And coming into Arnold's, I knew that I was very, very happy with the package that I was bringing, considering how I'd stepped on stage at Graftism. I was 2 kilos lighter for Arnold's than I was at the first show at my regional qualifier, and then only did 1 class. So I only did my open class at Arnold's, mainly because I wanted to see how I stacked up against the open girls, just because it was a pro qualifier. The winner of the overall gets a pro card, and it was also very, very expensive to enter. I'm not gonna lie.
How much are we talking? Because I know this isn't really talked about, but I spent an absolute wedge on a show day, and mine wasn't even as big a show as yours. So how much was your entry?
I reckon my entry was I'm pretty sure it was over £200.
Yours is way worse than mine. Mine was £70, yeah, and I thought that was steep.
Just to do 1 class. So, and I believe that
as well.
The beginners class would have been a little bit less than the open class, but it would have cost me up towards £500 for 2 classes, I'm pretty sure, if off the top of my head anyway. And I actually ended up, to my surprise, genuinely winning my open class, like my open height class, and going into the overall in contention with the girls for a pro card, which was an unbelievable experience. Like, I was just there happy to have bought a better package, in all honesty, because I knew that at Graftism I wasn't totally satisfied with how I looked. And to have gone in with absolutely no expectations, just had a blast up there, loved every minute of it, on a huge stage, like incredible stage, at probably the biggest show this year in the UK, if not in Europe, and actually win my open class just blew my mind. And I was just like, wow, like what an experience. You know, you're just on cloud 9. And then the overall, I'm not quite sure where I placed in the overall yet. I'm still waiting to see kind of like scorecards and stuff like that, but I will be definitely really, really excited to see those. And again, getting feedback from that, very good shape, just need more shoulders, more hamstrings. Generally, me and Kuba just think more muscle overall. I was the smallest girl muscle wise in the overall.
Really? Yeah.
My shape is there. I just need more muscle and more conditioning on my lower body.
Time in the gym, yeah. Less time dieting. So I'll just do a little bit about my show. So I entered the UK BFBA, UK DFBA, that's the one. Novice category. So that's a natural bodybuilding, and I did the Heart of England show. So that was on the 18th of September. So little did I know that this would be the biggest show of the year in terms of kind of that federation. So obviously it's nothing compared to the Arnold's, especially like kind of the classes that you choose, because I know they get stacked. I did the novice bodybuilding, and it was great. Like, I came 3rd. Obviously it's tricky being a tall guy, I must admit, because obviously novice was just split in half. There was 19 competitors in the class. That's
quite a stacked class though.
Yeah, I think, it was quite competitive, and they split it into 2. But they kind of didn't split it as like, these are the tall people and these are the shorter people. They just went straight down the middle, which is fine. And of course, your boy was the tallest one there, just the lanky beanpole on the side of the stage. But it went really well. Like, I think, looking back on it, I think I always knew it should have been planned better, because I didn't necessarily take the approach that you did. I've always just loved training and bodybuilding. However, I've always been a bit kind of like on the edge with competing, just, a little bit of self-doubt. You never really back yourself to do anything. And if you left your own devices, you just never do you? So I had a client.
Well, haven't you?
Sorry?
Prepped yourself as well, didn't you?
Yes, I did prep myself, which is something we're probably going to talk about. I decided to prep myself, and I decided, having been to a client's first show, so I prepped a client, Tom Reese, and I was like, I want to do this now. So I decided there and then that I was going to do it. So that gave me around 12-ish weeks from somewhat a not ideal position. Obviously, I was at the end of a mini cut, so I wasn't like super off season fluffy, but I wasn't lean by any stretch of the imagination. And what we've got to remember is, kind of, depending on your class, there will be different levels of, there'll be different requirements for what you need to bring. So because I was doing bodybuilding, everything's out. as you
kind of attest to, like everything's out, you can't hide anything. So I just decided there and then that I was going to bring the best condition I could and kind of just drop the pin from there. Like there was no kind of gradual taper into it. I just went for it. And I lost a lot of weight. So I was 86 was my lowest weigh-in. Bear in mind that my peak off-season weight was 115 kilograms. So I definitely got to work. But yeah, we're going to cover some more of the stuff in the questions. So I'm going to stop waffling on and we're going to get on to the questions. So I didn't take down the names of the people who asked the questions. Apologies. But the first question we have is, what were the difficult or stressful tasks aside from prep? So I'm not necessarily sure what this question means. I think it means kind of, are the day-to-day life, is day-to-day life tough alongside prep? I'll let you go first because I think this is from one of your clients.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that you have to remember when you prep, life goes on. Like just because you prep doesn't mean that everything stops for prep. Like you still have to do your food shop, you still have to spend time with your family, you still have to work, and all of these things are going to get harder as the weeks go by and as you start to become more fatigued and more tired. Your cognitive abilities start to decline as the week goes on, and I think that anything that requires a huge amount of, whether it's physical, like, because obviously I do one-to-one personal training, and also I know that you do online coaching as well. Anything that requires like any kind of physical aspect is, as you know, especially in the last few weeks, becomes 10 times harder. You become forgetful, you become
slow, like because everything is so slow. Like my general speed of conversation in my check-ins was just the slowest thing. Like I actually watched them back the other day and I was just like, I'm so frustrated looking at myself.
And that is just it. And then I don't know about you as well, but if you're trying to work and you've got people relying on you, of course, and you're there sat at your laptop and you're almost getting frustrated at yourself for not being able to focus as per what your standard would usually be. Because I could really differentiate at the time between what I knew would be my normal rate of work and what my brain was struggling to process in this like depleted like feels right at the back end of prep. I used to just beat myself up a lot for it, because I was just like, why can't you just do the simple task?
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I know what you mean when people are checking in and I almost kind of tried to put on a show. Like I would always structure my days so that I would do some prep non-negotiables and I'd do some like life non-negotiables. So for me, that would be like my check-ins and stuff. I would do those at the start of the day because I know that I would just deteriorate as the day goes on in terms of just my mood and just my, like you said, cognitive function. So I'd get up, I would do my first bout of cardio. I'd do a good bunch of steps, and then I would come back and I would do a lot of my work blocks. So I'd focus kind of on the more intense stuff. So mainly check-ins, and I would manage that by kind of giving a little reminder to my clients, like make sure that data is there the night before. So when I get up at God knows what time, because I'm freezing, I can do your check-in and you'll get the best of me. And thankfully, like a lot of my clients really kind of, they know what the process is like. So they weren't like, oh, why are you being like this? Like, what's wrong with you? They're like, oh, mate, amazing. Thank you. Like, I appreciate you don't feel right. Like quite a few messages like, are you okay? And I'm like, yes. But yeah, I think like you said, like life does go on, but it's very hard because you're in this kind of echo chamber of prep, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like your mood does change slightly. Like everything does, for me, became a little bit more negative. And I'm quite a cynical, negative person anyway. So sometimes you just got to catch yourself and be like, right, I've got to walk the dogs. Like they need a walk. I've got dogs. I had dogs before prep and I've got dogs now. They need a walk. Like they rely on me. And just like you, like you've got clients one-to-one. If you can't be bothered to put that weight back, like it's just not great, is it? Like you've got to summon that energy to kind of put that 20 kilogram back.
And I think it does help, like having understanding clients, because all of my clients really understood like what I was going through. So whether it is all the little things like them helping me with the weights on the bar and everything like that, it really makes a big difference.
I think and like you can create that environment by letting people know, like, because people do care. Like, I'm sure if you had a client and you're like, I'm really struggling today, like really struggling, they will, just because they're paying for your time and your expertise, they won't be like, oh, I'm paying for you, put that dumbbell away. Do you know what I mean? Most people are good natured in that sense. So I found that telling people that it was a bad day, or like I've got no energy, like not necessarily first thing in the check-in, but just being like, if you get something wrong in the video check-in, I'd be like, oh, sorry, like I'm having a tough day today, I'll say it again. I found that being very transparent with the whole process was quite helpful. Good question to start with. So second question, and again, I think this is from one of your clients. So what was the atmosphere, or what is the atmosphere like between competitors backstage if you don't know anyone? So you can go first, because I've got some good views on this one. So
I think that a massive part of the experience of competing is actually getting to know the people that you're competing with in the first place. I think that makes your prep so much, I'm not going to say easier, because obviously prep is fucking hard, but it does make it easier in a sense that you feel that community, feel like you know other people, you can actually communicate with other people that know what you're going through, or they're going through the same thing at the same time as you, if you're heading into the same shows. And then I think you almost feel better supported, because you've got these people that understand exactly where you're at, and they're experiencing similar things. And then when you get there on the day, you have already spoken to these people.
You've got friends there. It almost feels like,
so I think that you should really put effort into getting to know the people that are doing the same shows, not as like competition. Like, you shouldn't see them as competition. They're there as your support system, and you're their support system. And I think that really helps. Like, it's been probably one of the most special things about spending this year. Like, obviously this whole prep is actually getting to know these people, because it makes your experience so much better, in my opinion.
You're all in the same boat, aren't you? You're all going through the same thing. And I think, like, on show day, it might be different for your shows, it probably won't be. Like, it was stressful, but it was also very relaxed. Like, everyone was helping each other out. Like, I ran out of water, and the guy who won let me borrow some water. Obviously COVID safe, I didn't drink from his bottle, but like, the camaraderie backstage, we're helping each other pump up, like, and you do kind of network. And I have got people now that I'm speaking to on pretty much a daily basis that I met on show day in my class, that now I probably will in the future call friends. And I think it's more like, and for me, like, I'm not necessarily the most social person. Like, if people know me, like, I just put my headphones in and I don't speak to anyone. And I've got no qualms doing that most of the time. But like, I did feel, because prep kind of does break you down, it then like brings you together with people that have been through the same process. And like you said, like, it is a real positive that you get there and everyone's like, oh, you okay? Like, the tanning people are great. Like, even the people who are backstage understand your situation. Like, they have all been there. It's not like they are just random people, random stewards who've never like been bodybuilders or anything, or been on a stage. A lot of the time they can empathize with you. And I would recommend, like, go into it as a way of making friends and networking in the industry that you're in, because it's a bit more, was yours a natural federation?
No, Two Bros is untested.
Can be assisted. So it'll be the same. Like, the natural bodybuilding world is quite small, so like, everyone knows everyone. So at these shows, like, you are meeting people that you follow on Instagram. You are meeting people that you might feel are kind of slightly further ahead of you in their journey, but if you pluck up the courage to like say hello to them, they're just normal people. They're just normal guys, and they'll be very down to earth with you and just chat to you. And it's just something that I didn't necessarily think was going to be the case. But yeah, I thought it was way more social and way more kind of chilled than I thought, which was good, because
some people might get the idea that you go backstage and everyone's eyeing each other up, or it's like really competitive, but that is honestly not how it was, like, whatsoever.
Yeah. And I mean, like, if you're worried about people like eyeing you up, like you're about to step on stage, like it is what it is. Like, people are going to look at you and people are going to make their own judgments of you. And I mean, there is a little bit of kind of, if you know, like potentially like it's between you and another athlete, it might be kind of, there might be a bit of tension there, but it's a bad thing. Like it is a competition, and almost you want that kind of edge to bring out the best in you. Because if you're back there thinking like, right, I need to pump up, like I've worked so hard for this, and then this then drives your performance on the stage, that you're posing like an absolute demon. Like, it's a good thing, and you want that. It's only when it becomes kind of bitter and everyone's like, because obviously everything we're doing is a subjective sport. It's not like this person ran faster, so therefore they are better than me on this day. It is someone else's opinion. So there'll always be that question in the back of everyone's head, like, were they better than me? But yeah, and it's when that creeps in to the kind of backstage stuff or the social media side of things afterwards, that things can get a little bit sour. But I honestly haven't seen that for a long time. And I think that's great, like, because no one wants to, I don't want to be bitter about coming third, and likewise I don't want to bring someone down for coming first. Like, I don't want to take anything away from them, because if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't want anyone pulling me down, because they've worked just as hard as me. So like, when you came first, like, someone in fifth could have easily tweeted, I don't know, people don't tweet anymore, put out like an Instagram post like blah 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 blah, but then that would just pull you down, and there's no real benefit to it. And I think people are getting a lot better at just focusing on what they can control. Like, if I came third, I know why I came third. I just didn't have enough muscle, so there we go, I need to go and fix that straight away. But yeah, I think that was another good question from one of your clients. Got a good client, good
Yeah, they've done well, actually.
yeah, they pulled out the bag, apart from some of the questions. Right. Next question. Biggest competing misconception. I'll start. I saw you look up to the skies, which means you didn't have an answer, so I'm going to blag this one. So, biggest competing misconception. I think in the digital age, a lot of us follow very elite athletes. And this could be elite in kind of assisted bodybuilding or natural bodybuilding. And what we've got to remember is, as a first timer, you are not on that level. No offense, like, we are not on the level of people going to the Olympia. So our perception of prep is going to be so far away from theirs, because they've done it 5, 6, they've been in 10 shows. Yeah, so that was it wasn't a misconception I had, but I was almost like, I've dieted before, like, I've got lean, like, because I have got lean, like pretty lean. Yeah, like I've got lean, but then there's lean, and then there's like lean. So I was just kind of, that is my biggest misconception, that you compare kind of, oh, this person did it in 22 weeks, they weren't tired, they weren't grumpy, they didn't have mood swings, whereas realistically, until you're in it, you don't necessarily know how you're going to feel. And that's something that I kind of wish I knew before I went into the prep, because like I said, like, I did have low days where I was just really tired. And I was almost, because of the misconception I had, I was kind of like, right, this person doesn't feel like this. Like, why do I feel like this? Like, he's the best, he won the Open. I'm feeling terrible. Like, he didn't feel terrible at 6 weeks out. Why is this? And then that just snowballs into the kind of like self-doubt again. And that's the last thing you want, considering you want to keep kind of external stress that's just in your own head, as low as possible during the prep. But yeah, I'm sure I'll probably think of another one, but I'll let you go.
So I think, especially as a first timer, and you're, like you said, looking up to people that have done it time and time and time again, and especially with, maybe this is particularly for women and females that looking into like bikini or like even figure, any of the classes really, and you see the the glitz and the glam and the bikini and like obviously the tan and the makeup and the hair. And
it's a thing to be reckoned with. Like
you think of the 12-week prep in, or 12 to 20-week prep in getting the body that you have when you stand on stage. But I think that a common misconception is that it is just that, and it's not about, you know, the months, the year that you've done preparing your physique for prep in the first place. I think that it's the work that goes in before the prep that is a little bit forgotten about when you just think about prep itself, and then people think that that's what gets you looking like you do on the day.
100%. Like, sorry, that's my I think, yeah, that's a great standpoint. I think, especially as a first timer, like you've got to have put in the work beforehand. Otherwise, I don't know, it relates back to your own kind of standards of what you want to achieve. But like, that was one of the things that put me off not put me off or stopped me for so long, because I was just like, I can have another year here of trying to grow muscle. I need another year. And I think that did serve me in good stead, considering I'm a tall bloke. I think if I'd competed when I first got into bodybuilding without putting the time in, I think it could have potentially gone worse for me. And I think another misconception I had was my kind of approach to after competing. So I was quite naive to the fact of what a prep, like you said, a prep can often be seen as like that 12 to 20 week period. But it's not though, is it? Because as you will know now, you're 2 weeks post show, I'm 5 weeks post show. I would still class myself as in prep essentially, because there's so much that we'll probably talk about in a bit. There's so much you have to think about after prep. It's not just as simple as, right, I'm going to go back to my normal life. I'm going to be eating donuts. I'm going to be like going to Nando's cheeky every day. Like, it just doesn't work like that. Because especially after prep, like you're just in no place to be doing any of the things that you see as normal before prep, because you've put yourself through so much stress, psychologically, physiologically, and all the rest. Like, you need to manage that post-show window just as much as the prep itself, I would say, if the goal is kind of long-term progress in this sport. But yeah, we'll talk more about post-show later on, because I think that's kind of a really important topic that needs its own question. But yeah, there's tons of misconceptions, but I think they're kind of our top two, or the first two ones that came into our head, because obviously I'm just putting you on the spot. Right then, so what will you take away from your first competition?
So I would say that you will be so surprised by your ability to just keep going. Like, sometimes I think that if I thought about how I would feel and what I would be doing and just doing it without question towards the back end of prep, you almost don't believe it. I almost wouldn't believe it. I would have thought that, yeah, I could absolutely just do it. But when you're in it, you're thinking about everything you're doing, all the boxes that you're ticking, like day in, day out. Just kind of, it's a bit like Groundhog Day, like it's the same day same day, but it doesn't get any easier, does it? That you'll surprise yourself just by what you are capable of doing without even questioning. You just become an absolute robot.
100%. I think, like, yeah, I would agree. Like, I don't know, like my cardio was super high. I felt like I was in the gym all the time. But it does like show your work ethic that you can do things, like you said. Like, it's not easy, but you can eat, what's the term? Like, you can definitely do things despite 100% not wanting to, when every like inch of your body and your mind and like your social groups, WhatsApp groups, like chats are telling you not to do it. You can find a way of doing it. And like, that's something that I want to carry on into every aspect of my life, but just give it more food so I can do it really well. So like business, nutrition, like it's taught me like obviously like nutritionist, stuff like that. Like, it's just highlighted things that I know I knew, but like the importance of them and how I can just relentlessly execute them despite not wanting to do them. Like life gets tough sometimes, but you still have kind of agency to do things, and more importantly, do the things that you said you were going to do. Like, because there is points in prep where you want to quit, like, and I'll admit there was tears on my prep. Like I was upset about things. Like some things were just irrational tears. Like one was just a random song on Spotify, just came on, tears on the Stairmaster. I was just like, I just can't do this. But then I just did it. And it's just one of those things. And like you said, it looking back, it's so strange. Like you're just like, why did I do that to myself? But then like it's easy once you've done it to be like, oh, it was just a bit of cardio, or it was just low calories.
When you've had a few meals in you, a few more calories, and then it's just like, oh, why was I so emotional that day when I dropped my keys and I just burst out into tears?
Exactly, yeah. So like, yeah, it is really interesting. And I think there's so much to take away from a competition. I think that could be like a podcast or video in itself. So we'll leave that there. This is a good one. Another one from your client. Did you develop a bad relationship with food due to how strict the diet was during prep?
So for me, I think that what has largely helped my mindset towards food post-show is the fact that I've actually got quite a lot of food now, even on my reverse diet plan. I think if I was taking a different approach, which I totally understand, like people take the whole increasing things very slowly, maybe like 100 calories at a time or back to maintenance and very slowly from there. I think that I would almost feel so overly restricted that it would lead me to a point where I may be tempted to binge. As much as I would like to think of myself as like very focused and very set on my goals for this off season, like I think it would be quite difficult, because I'm eating I'm eating on average about 2,800 calories a day now, and I am still starving. Like I'm bottomless, like my stomach is a black hole. And I think that just goes to show that if I was, say, for example, eating, if I was set like 2,100, my lowest prep calories were about 1,300 calories a day. And that's a massive jump. But if I didn't have that, I think that I would really struggle not to go over the top with food. I don't know how you found it coming into the last few weeks of prep, but I got very, very food focused, probably 2 weeks out from my first show. And going into peak weeks where I had more food, it almost made me more hungry and it made it worse. And since coming out of the finishing the season, I've not felt the need to binge once. I've allowed myself flexibility. So everything is allowed. I'm having an off-plan meal once or twice a week. And that's really helping me with my relationship with food, because I don't feel like it's so like tightly restricted anymore. Like it's always going to be there. I can have it, I want it, but I don't have to feel like this is my last supper on earth every single time I eat.
Which is what it feels like you said, the food focus in prep, it builds. And I think like it's a fine line between allowing it and rejecting it, because like I found myself watching food challenges on YouTube, like during my cardio, but that actually helped me a little bit. And I haven't kind of, my approach post-show is a little bit different because I've had a few issues, but I was quite food focused, but I didn't actually have any hunger, because my hunger signaling until that peak week just down regulated. I knew I wanted food, but it was almost that feeling of like, you just have that space to fill, but it's not a small space. It's just like the Grand Canyon. So you know, kind of having that extra square of dark chocolate is not going to touch the sides, because what you actually need is 7-8 weeks and a calorie maintenance. Like you need a diet break. You need to have not done prep. Like it's not going to go away. And I think as I transition to post show, like I do this a lot, and I probably still do it now. Like I was going into supermarkets and I was just looking at all the stuff and I just couldn't decide. And I was like, is that going to fill me up? No. Like there's this, my friend said, it's like trying to scratch that itch, but you don't know where it is. Like but as soon as you catch that thought and you realize that like whatever I eat here isn't going to fill that void, I just need to understand that I'm eating food now. It's okay. I can. And my approach post-show is a little bit kind of different to yours, because obviously I'm still having some kind of digestive issues. We're not sure why that's happening, but it's happening. So it means I'm having to have like quite a rigid structure to my diet, which it's quite tough. Like, but luckily, like I love structure. So I'm basically, it's a bit boring, eating the foods I did on prep, just a lot more of them, because it doesn't kind of create that reaction that I'm getting in my digestive system. So like I'm sticking to rice-based products and oats. And I mean, I'm a simple guy. That's perfect for me. Like 100 grams of oats absolutely hits the spot. But like there's different approaches. And I think it is important to kind of, obviously you have a coach, like, and I'm coaching myself, like adapt it based on the psychology of the client. And to say kind of you will or you won't get a bad relationship with food from prep, I think would be a lie, because food is a big part of it. I just think it's like you need to have a structure around you that nurtures you as an individual, like yours, having off-plan meals twice a week, allowing yourself foods, but also having the ability and the skill to regulate that. So like if you have a donut, knowing, right, I probably don't need as many carbs with my dinner or something like that. Like, and I think that's something that will come from time in the game as well. Like, I think if you do a prep when you're kind of 16, you could potentially come into a lot more issues than if kind of we're a little bit further down the line and we've got kind of years in the trenches as such, or as people would call it.
Find that, you know, having that structure really is helpful, because I'm very structured as well. Like I couldn't imagine not having a set meal plan. I think it's the options to be like, okay, if I want this, like I really can have this, but I can account for that. So then off-plan meals, like I always try to make sure that they're already pre-planned. So it's not like, oh, I just fancy a pizza, I'm just going to get a pizza. Like I'm going out for an occasion to socialize. That's more so the purpose than anything, is to give back that time to people that have been waiting for that time, like for
like loved ones, like partners, stuff like family, like is a big one. Like I've been spending a lot of time with my family, like just enjoying my mum's cooking, which is something like, because in prep, like, obviously I was rejecting her cooking and that didn't go down very well. So I don't think I'll get a stocking at Christmas at this rate. But yeah, I think prep can be what it is. And it will always put a strain on food. And one thing I will say is if you have a bad relationship with food going into prep, it will only kind of heighten that relationship. So if you have tendencies of binge eating before prep, don't prep. If you have a bad relationship with food before prep, don't prep, because like we said, we're quite, like, we've been in the game for a long time and even we struggled with food focus. So like if you've yo-yo dieted all your life and struggled with kind of yo-yoing in weight, potentially might not be the option, or iron out those problems before you enter the prep. But like a prep will just make everything worse that is already there.
You have to be at peace with knowing that your relationship is with
everything, like everything, who you are as a person, everything in your life. But yeah, that's another great question. So well done. I think that was one of your plans again. So post-show plans. This is an interesting one. Post-show plans. I'll go first because you go first on everything. Post-show plans. So obviously, well, or not obviously, if you follow me on socials, good. If you don't follow me on socials, follow me on socials. That's Alex Project Sparks on Instagram, stuff like that. So I've talked about it a bit. So I have actually suffered with some digestive issues post-show. So this could be down to a number of reasons. So this could be down to kind of the rigid structure that I ate on prep, because you basically eat the same foods most days. And that's just the way it is. And that's the way I approached it. But I have kind of struggled with digestion post-show. Nothing too disgusting, just more kind of extreme bloating. So they are thinking it could be kind of like an intestinal issue or a mild flare of IBS because of how I pushed myself at the end of the prep, which is probably not the best. However, I'm just trying to focus now on getting my calories to a conservative maintenance whilst limiting the kind of side effects of what I'm experiencing, because what I was experiencing was if I ate a meal, well, I don't know what was in the meal, but if I ate a certain type of meal, could be anything because we don't know what it is, I would kind of extremely bloat, I'd feel sick, and then I wouldn't be able to eat necessarily for kind of like a day afterwards. And for my recovery phase, that is terrible. So I've kind of taken the approach of, right, I'm just going to eat the foods that I can digest well and keep processing, eat more of them, and gradually increase food at a slower rate than I'd probably like, which, yes, will draw out the recovery process from this prep. However, I don't want to kind of be looking at like IBS long term, because that will not be good for my bodybuilding goals, because obviously at some point I'm going to have to eat 6,000 calories, and having a digestive issue that limits what you eat is never going to be any good for that. So right now it's kind of, I am more on a slow reverse diet approach, and my main plan is to recover. So enter a recovery phase where basically I'm just going to sit at like baseline volume in my training, and then try and regain some strength and muscle that I probably did lose on prep. But yeah, we're going to talk about training and nutrition a little bit more in a minute. So what's your post-show plans?
So currently, for me, as I obviously touched on just a little bit earlier, is we have jumped up quite a bit. So volume, again, similarly to you, is at that baseline, absolute baseline. I'm doing one set per exercise with a rep in reserve, basically like 12 to 15, and that is it. That is all really my body can handle, especially after legs, because I still feel absolutely battered like after a leg session. So as much as my energy is much better recovered, clearly physiologically I'm still not there, and I won't be there until I'm a little bit nearer to where my body would naturally want to sit. So that is why, in a way, on top of relationship with food that we touched on earlier, like why calories have shot up quite quick and I'm not doing any cardio, my expenditure is very, very low, is we're going through that recovery phase where we're trying to get my health back to where it needs to be in order to then start the transitioning into a productive off season as soon as I really can. And I'm still below my set point. My body still not is telling me all the feedback that it's still not where it needs to be. So I will happily accept like the fat gain that I need to in order to get it back to the position that it needs to be. And weight will start to taper off a little bit. And we are just kind of waiting for that to happen and wait for me to start feeling good in terms of my energy and my performance in the gym, because it is still so far below like where my baseline would usually be.
If you think about a prep, like how much fatigue you're accumulating over that prep, and like, yes, you feel it in the prep, but you're just in it, you're just living it, and you're just doing, like, regardless of how you feel, you wake up and you tick those boxes, like we said. And it's only really like, I'm acknowledging it now, like 5 weeks post show, like my legs are still dead. Like if I didn't give myself like non-negotiables of like a step target and training, obviously, like my body could happily say like, don't train today. Like legs today was an absolute struggle, and I really didn't enjoy the session, but I got it done, and I know it's kind of part of the recovery process, and I just need to accept that it is time out of a diet. And obviously mine's slower because I haven't been able to have that initial bump up in calories, but I do feel 100% better than I did. Like if this podcast had happened during our peak weeks, I think it would have been a 5-hour podcast and we would have answered no questions. So I think like cognitively, I'm feeling really good. Like I have got the energy. Maybe my body's not necessarily caught up with how my brain feels. I think my brain, obviously, because it runs just on carbohydrates, really did struggle. And that's why I just slowed down in that kind of latter stages of prep. And the minute my carbohydrates went above 200, I was feeling good again. I could talk, I could move my eyes, which is always good. But yeah, that's kind of my post-show plans. Like, how long are we talking for you in terms of off season, or what in terms of competing again? Because obviously now you've placed big time. You've got to keep going in the big leagues. So how are you going to think about that?
again, like the plan is to just see how we get on with recovery, see how we get on with the off season. Obviously I was still one of the smaller girls on stage, so I have to really put my head down and try and gain as much muscle as I possibly can. We are going to reevaluate everything most likely the beginning of next year in the spring as to whether I'm at where I ought to be at, because I'm very, very much so wanting to come in competitive, and wanting to make significant improvements. It's been mentioned.
Yeah. Go for it. I say, how can you just go for it? Commit.
You know what? I would love to. I just, whether I'm ready for next year, I basically left it up to Cuba to say, okay, we'll reevaluate next year. If he thinks that I'm ready to go, then we'll go. If we think we need a little bit more time, I'm in no hurry. I'd rather come back knowing that I bought the package that I'm very, very happy with and it's going to be competitive. If that's 2023, then I'm in it for the long run. I'm in no rush. So I'll just do what needs to be done. So I've kind of left that decision up to him. As much as I would love to prep again next year, it would be towards the back end of the year where I would compete again.
You're just out of prep and you want to get back into prep.
Oh, no.
The carbohydrates talking, that's not a rational choice.
What about you?
Yeah, I think, like, again, I'm going to come back to being tall. Like, I would now hopefully be in a tall class, but I want a long off season, and I think I just want to find that love for training again, because I didn't necessarily love training during prep. We haven't necessarily spoken about that, just because kind of you're just dragging yourself, and it's a constant battle of trying to beat where you were at your heaviest, which is not a good comparison to make, because obviously you're losing. There is no comparison. Yeah, like, but I just want to fall back in love with training, and then I know that will drive me to become a better version for the stage when I get back on stage. And I'm thinking maybe 2-3 years. Realistically, to actually grow where I need to grow, because I hold weight quite well. So when I'm around like 100 kilograms, like, I've got abs, but like I fill out in good places. So I look like I've got big legs, stuff like this. But then what I've realized when I dieted is, like, all of that came off. Like, a lot of what I thought was like hard tissue, it really wasn't. So that just makes me realize that I have a lot of muscle to put on, especially kind of like arms. Like, I'm always going to struggle being like 6'2", like, but that's no excuse. And like, arms have been a priority for me for so long, and the fact that they are still a priority annoys me a bit. So I'm going to really kind of use that to kind of drive my off season. And I don't want to, like, I felt really good coming third. Like, I was like really like overwhelmed, because I didn't think I was going to do very well. But like, I would love to, like, the next time I get on stage, be like, people would be like, wow, like, he has improved so much. Like, and then to be able to kind of know to myself that, like, that time in the middle, like, I did everything in my power, like, to get better and just be a better version of myself. And I think that's, as competitors, that's all you can really do.
All about, really, regardless of placings, like, that is what it's all about, is coming back.
And I think, like, I just need to switch now, because obviously a prep is very like goal orientated. Like, you have an end date, like, this date is the date, you're gonna make it or break it. But now it's like, I want to get back into like the process orientated, because I just love training. Like, before I did Instagram, like when I was 15, 16, 17, like, I just trained. Like, if I didn't have I just loved being in the gym, and I still have that feeling. I want to get that back, and then just drive my performance up and really kind of get strong and get stronger than I ever have. And then that will result in more tissue, hopefully.
100%. And I think training is such a big part of it as well. And if you don't enjoy training, very likely is you're not going to get to where you need to be or make the improvements you need to make.
Exactly. And like, if you don't enjoy nutrition either, like, it all fits into pieces of the puzzle, and like, they all work together to make the best athletes, I think. So let's have a look at the next question. We've got 2 more. So, how bad did you feel in the last week of prep? And then what are the long-term health implications of a prolonged dieting phase? So How bad did you feel in the last week of prep?
Oh, pretty bad, to be honest. I think there was probably a couple of times where maybe not the last week, because I probably saw you and we were in the latter stages of prep, probably just going through our last sessions.
Yeah.
And you look over at someone and they look over and you have that mutual respect. It's like, I know you feel shit, you know.
Like,
yeah. I feel almost peak week was probably better in extent because you're starting to carb up, aren't you? So you're starting to increase your carbs. You probably feel like the tiniest little spark of who you used to be very, very briefly. But the one thing I think that made me struggle the most, even during peak week, was if my sleep really declined, and if I didn't sleep, I felt like death. Yeah. If I slept okay, I'd feel all right. But on the days that sleep was really starting to become tough, I honestly felt like death on legs some days.
I'd agree with that. Like, obviously our sleep hormones get so disrupted from like an aggressive calorie deficit and high fatigue. So there is a reason for that. But the worst thing is we know that. And we know that sleep is so important to us. And like that sleep anxiety makes it worse because you're lying there at 3 a.m. and you're like, I need to sleep or else today's going to be shit. But you can't do anything about it. And as coaches, we know how to get people to sleep better, but it's very hard during like the very aggressive stages of prep to actually overcome that. And I'll be the first to say it. And that it was really hard. And I mean, my hardest weeks of prep was following the vaccine. So I had my second dose of Pfizer. I'm going to say it. It might get flagged on YouTube because you're not allowed to say anything nowadays. So I might have to bleep it out. And I just felt terrible. Like I had some quite bad kind of, not side effects. Yeah, side effects. I remember being freezing. I was wearing like 6 t-shirts at the gym, 2 hoodies and a outside jacket, and everyone was like, are you okay? But I didn't have the energy to reply, so it didn't matter. How did I feel in peak week? Peak week was a mixed bag. Like so my approach to peak week was we were planning 3 low days of 0 carb, and the latter 2 low days were like a mild fat load, where we kind of drive up fats to try and fill out some intracellular triglycerides, and then we would have high days. So on the first high day, actually let's start with the low days. On those 3 low days, could probably say they were the hardest things I've ever done, because cardio was still in. It was being tapered down so we could reduce kind of fatigue as much as we could, but it was still in. And I still had to do day-to-day stuff. So like the first question, like I had to do check-ins. I had to go and do 15,000 steps. And it was tough because I just had no energy. The first high day, so I had 750 carb. I felt like Beyonce, felt incredible. I was just bouncing around. So we introduced my first carbohydrate intra-workout on a pump session. And I had like 80 grams of carbs in my intra-workout. And honestly, you could see the change in me. Like it was, I can't describe it. I just felt like my neuro pathways, do you know, like in the Matrix where you get plugged in? Like I was just like, and I was just awake. And then I was like, wow, like now I know what this feels like. But then interestingly, on my second high day, where we ran 750 again, I felt terrible, absolutely terrible.
So quickly.
Yeah, it was almost like the novelty wore off and my body was like, you're still absolutely ruined, so don't get your hopes up. And then I just got carried on the kind of, right, show is in like 2 days, I'm just going to keep going. And then I didn't feel too bad. But yeah, the worst days, there was quite a few bad days, but I felt bad during the peak week, but not as bad as some of the other weeks, kind of similar to you. And long-term health implications, I mean, there's always going to be some, like, you never know, like there could be long-term health implications for walking down the street. Like,
yeah, it's a very individual thing, isn't it? And everyone copes with these things very differently depending on how they ran their prep, how they did their off season, even like beforehand. Like all these things like play a part in the implications that you have post show.
Yeah, and I think like to say there would be no implications would be naive, but to say there definitely will be would also be like a disservice to competing. I think you just got to be careful because what you're doing is a very extreme thing, and extreme things can cause extreme reactions, as I'm finding out. But that's something I signed up. Well, I didn't sign up for it, but I accepted the kind of risks when I entered a prep. So now I accept the kind of implications as such. Like I know that I pushed myself really hard on prep, and this is why I'm experiencing this. And you never know until you've done something. I think obviously you know that your hormones will be ruined, but that can be as simple as a recovery phase and you could get your hormones back to where they were. Like, and you don't know until you track these things. So I'm looking to do bloods around week 8, just to check my natural testosterone. Because I know that during prep, like that was the last thing my body wanted to do was produce testosterone. So I know that right now it's down, and I knew during prep it was down. I'll be more concerned about 8 weeks post show. Is it back? Are all my other markers back to where they should be? And if they're not, then you do something about it. And if they are, lovely, like well done, like crack on. Last question then, and it's a big one. I think we've touched on it. So like, how was your training impacted during prep?
Yeah.
The sigh says it all.
To be fair, I think you go in with this mindset, like you are so determined, aren't you, when you're logging your numbers and you've built up to this like climactic strength that you've had in off season. You're trying so hard to hold on to that, but then you get to this point in prep where just things just start to drop off.
Yeah, it slips off really quick. Like there's definitely a wall, and as a first time competitor, I think it's very different to people you see on Instagram who are managing to somehow lift what they did in off season. Because I see this a lot, and this was something that frustrated me and made me feel worse about my training. Because like like we spoke about it before we pressed record, like we're going back into our training now and I'm lifting like half of what I did in my like optimal body weight, optimal recovery standpoint. And in the last few weeks of prep, like you just need to think about doing the minimum amount that you can do to retain that muscle mass that you have. And the good thing is that's a lot less than you actually think, as long as intensity is there. But yeah, like my training, like I don't know if it's because you're just dragging yourself through the session because you have no energy, or you just, as the body weight goes down, your levers change, everything feels just horrible.
You don't have the same, when you're that much lighter, you just don't have the same stability.
Exactly. And weight moves weight. Like 115 kilogram Alex, like deadlifting 250 like easily for reps, like, and then an 86 kilogram Alex in peak week, like they're not comparable, like you said. Like, and yes, you need to retain strength as much as you can, but at some point there will be a drop off because you are not the same person that you were 20 weeks before. And I think, like we said, as a first time competitor, that's something you need to know, but that doesn't also give you, sorry, carry on.
Oh no, look, obviously you just have to be prepared for it, because at the end of the day, like physiologically you change so much. And a lot of the time when we get into, anyone who gets into competing has probably got some sort of love for or emotional attachment to training. And then when you start to see that decline and you almost feel like all that work that you put into your off season, building that strength up, like 1.25 by 1.25, like kind of slipping away, it can be quite difficult, because like that's what pushed you towards competing in the first place. And you have to accept that that's a totally different phase, a totally different body. Like I literally felt like towards the back end of prep, I would get in the leg press and I just felt like I was going to snap, like literally. I was just like, this is so sad. But you know, I still had the appreciation for training. Like I'd still, don't get me wrong, some days were really hard to come in and think that I know that this isn't going to be a good session. I've not slept. I feel like my energy's at rock bottom, drag myself. And then you take yourself through that session and it is a bit like, but then I've always got in my mind, like, I know that this is something I love. Like, I know that prep is something that is my choice. It's coming into the session, it's my choice. And this is temporary. Like, this is a temporary feeling. And I'm going to be able to build that strength up. And like you said, for this, your plans for this off season, I'm going to come back stronger than ever. So always in my mind, when I'm under the leg press thinking I'm going to snap, I'm thinking ahead to like all the progress that I'm eventually going to be able to make once this is done. But that's just a temporary sacrifice for where you need to put the position you need to put your body in.
Exactly, because training is not the optimal performance is not the focus of that diet, is not the focus of that phase, like you said. And having phase specific goals, I think, is massive. Like, the phase specific goal of a prep is to get into condition and be on stage with a level of muscularity that you can be proud of. And of course, training is an integral part of that. But again, depending on the nature of your prep, how aggressive you have to go, it will dictate how much your training gets a hit. And of course, there's freaks of nature out there, like people who can just deadlift up until the last week, do all the lifts, like, but it's just be realistic. But also don't bottle it. Like, don't give yourself wiggle room early on, because like prep for you was a long thing. And if you thought in week 1, I'm in prep now, I can just not do the hard yards, you probably wouldn't have held on to all the muscle that you did. But in the latter stages, like that last week, like, it's a risk to reward. Like, is doing 160 kilogram RDL going to benefit you much? Probably not. It's just going to make you feel broken. You're going to be in a recovery pit and you could just get injured, which, as we get leaner, that risk goes up massively. But yeah, good question. Right then, so that is all of our questions, which is good. I think we've answered them really well. So Gem, thanks for coming on. But before you go, tell us where we can find you, your social media, because obviously you're an online coach. Tell us who you coach, and where people can find you if they want to get coached by you.
Okay, so mainly just through Instagram on Gem Centamore Fit, and I coach women, basically body composition, body transformations with performance as well. So that is my main, what I would say, like, niche, essentially. And yeah, just contact me through there.
Perfect. So I'll put all your details in the description for the video. But thanks for coming on. It's been a great chat, and I wish you all the best. So I will speak to you soon.